Good afternoon. I'm Steve Schlisky, the Programs and Activities Chair of the local chapter of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. Our chapter has been doing monthly Zoomcasts on a variety of subjects, but today we've been really looking forward to this one, presenting the first of what we hope to be a series of programs focusing on what works for the media professionals in our chapter. We are fortunate to have two talented MMJs who have helped define the craft in our chapter. We'll meet them in a moment, but first I would like to introduce our chapter president, Randy Forsman.
Hi, Steve. Thank you. Welcome to everybody, all of our members and any non-members joining us this afternoon. But yes, my name is Randy Forsman. I am the president of the San Francisco Northern California chapter of NATAS, which is the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. I would say that wrong. Our chapter covers not only San Francisco, but Sacramento, Hawaii, Fresno, Reno, Chico, Redding, Eureka, Monterey, Salinas, and also Guam. We currently have nearly 1,300 members. We are more than just the Emmy Awards. We also do the Gold and Silver Circle. We do high school student production awards and college scholarships. So on that, I would like to introduce Nazi Javid. She is our current chapter secretary and news director and anchor at North Coast News at KAEF in Eureka. Nazi, take it away.
Thank you, Randy, for the introduction. And thank you, everybody, for coming today. We're so excited about this. Again, my name is Nazi Javid. I serve as a governor and an officer for NATAS SF, and I am the news director and evening news anchor here in Eureka. We wear many hats. We here in Eureka, I'll tell you a little bit about us. We've got a total of 10 team members here. That's me. We have 2 anchor reporters, 2 multimedia journalists, 1 producer, 3 production assistants, a technical director, a creative services producer, and an engineer. So we're a small team, but we get a lot done. We are in Humboldt, the Emerald Triangle. We also cover Del Norte and Trinity and Mendocino counties. We are about 5 hours north of San Francisco. Our small newscast was nominated for an Emmy back in 2018 for our coverage of the campfire. And I have 1 open MMJ position that I'm actively recruiting for. I had to throw it out there. I'll drop a link in chat for anyone who may want to send an application in later or share it with someone you know. And with that, I will send it over to Riley Carroll, the San Francisco chapter's nominating committee chair. She is also one of my MMJs here in Eureka. Hi, Riley.
Hi, Nazi. Thank you so much. I just wanted to say a quick hello. Like Nazi said, my name is Riley. I'm an MMJ in Eureka. This is my first job, my first news job, and I'm learning so much. It's a wonderful place to be. And I recently joined the Board of Governors for NATAS. And you'll just see me popping up in the chat, helping to facilitate some question and answers later on.
Thanks, Riley. We'll send it over to Shane Calvert, who also serves as a governor on the board. He's from our sister station, KRCR, and who represents the Chico Redding market. Shane, can you tell us more about your market and position?
Hey, hello from the road. Yeah, thank you everyone for joining us today, and thanks for getting my invite, those of you who joined. I am representing the Chico Redding market. We have roughly, give or take, sometimes over 10 MMJ positions covering Chico Redding, along with, a full news and TV crew production of commercials, promotions department, and I represent the promotions and commercial production department. So I'm really more on the promotions end, working with all of our MMJs. I don't work alone because when I'm out with the team, I'm with the MMJs, and part of that is shooting promotions, and then be also as a treat, be like, hey, let's do a stand-up because you guys are alone all the time. So we'll try to have fun and do that. But it's a great little market. We got a lot of talented people here. So thank you guys for joining.
Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Shane. And we're going to toss it over to Chris Carpenter now out of CSU Monterey Bay, here to tell us more about his position with the board, the university, and the Monterey Salinas TV market. Hi, Chris.
Yeah, hi. So my name is Chris Carpenter. I work at CSU Monterey Bay in the Cinematic Arts department. And I worked in television for many, many years in the local market. And I am the Monterey Salinas rep. I definitely am excited about this forum and having some of my students who are here get to know more about what's going on, as well as seeing some of our local reporters as well. So it's great to be a part of this. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chris. And without further ado, the guest speakers you've all been waiting to meet: KPIX multimedia journalists Dalin and Devin Fehely. Where you at? Give us a wave. Hello. Thank you guys so much for making time to be here with us today. I'll give you a little bit of bio behind each one of these amazingly talented journalists. Da Lin is an award-winning journalist at KPIX 5 News in the Bay Area. He joined KPIX in 2012, but has been reporting the news in the Bay Area since 2007. Is that right? And Da grew up in Oakland,
in the Bay Area.
From the Bay Area. He grew up in Oakland. Before his return to the Bay Area, he spent 5 years covering the news at 3 other TV stations in Texas, Southern, and Central California. He also spent 5 years reporting at KRON in San Francisco, as you heard him mention there. And his coverage of major stories, including the Oscar Grant killing, has earned him 10 awards from the Bay Area Press Photographers Association and the Northern California Radio and Television News Directors Association. We also have a quick look at some of his work. Check it out.
When it comes to crime and safety, Oakland is a tale of 2 cities. We're at Lake Merritt, the heart of Oakland. To my right, downtown, uptown, West Oakland, and all the way up to the hills. Police say in the first 11 months, all of those areas, 12 homicides. To my left, East Oakland, 88 homicides. The farther east you go, the more shootings and killings. Here's a map of East Oakland. 2020, many say it's the worst year. A lot of death and destruction. But the Bay Area is resilient, and there are still a lot of good things happening. Let's end this year on a positive note. I'm setting up shop at Ghirardelli Square, asking people, what's your good news?
Our big good news is this little guy. He was born in August.
Incredible work. Just amazing. Speaking of talent, we have incredible talent with us. Also, Devin Fehely is a guest speaker. He's an Emmy Award-winning general assignment reporter at MMJ for KPIX 5 as well. And before joining KPIX, Devin was at WXIA in Atlanta, where he spent 4 years reporting. During that time, he won a ton of awards, including 3 Murrow Awards and the Gannett Foundation Award for Innovation in Investigative Journalism from the National Association of Black Journalists for a series of stories that helped free a wrongfully convicted man. Prior to that, Devin reported for WAGA in Atlanta, WDSU in New Orleans, KSBW 8 in Monterey, and KNTV in San Jose. And we have a peek at Devin's incredible work.
The winds are definitely here. The fire is spreading now downhill. We're looking at 80, 90 mile an hour winds.
This is the story of how we ended up in a tiny kayak on the open ocean, a vast sea of blue, north of Santa Barbara. It's got a lot to do with this breathtaking beach, a sandy, unspoiled slice of California's coast that you've probably never heard of, and almost certainly, by design, have never stepped foot on.
The traditional male's role is very macho. And the women portray exactly the opposite, a very submissive role.
If Five Wounds Church is the beating heart of San Jose's Portuguese community, the close-knit neighborhoods that surround it are the arteries through which the lifeblood of faith and family and tradition flow.
Unbelievable stuff there, guys. Just incredible. Give me the goosebumps both times. A lot of serious talent in the Zoom room today, so we are not going to waste any time. We're going to jump into our questions, which range from pitching to time management and creative active stand-ups. As you just saw, our guests have sample links to their work also on standby to show us how it works. So Don, Devin, thank you for being here. And thank you everybody for joining us. We all know that 2020 brought challenge, but it also brought innovation. And as we leap into this year, we're hoping that you too might share your wealth of knowledge with us, your secrets, because you guys have seen it all and you know what works. And for our participants, you can please feel free to drop your questions into the chat. If a question pertains to the topic of discussion, Riley Carroll will chime in and share your question to get that answered for you. And if you have something maybe unrelated to the topic, we will get your question answered for the back end of this call. So we have some set questions that we'd like to start with, but we are going to follow where they go. So the first things first, we're in the COVID era. As restrictions start to loosen and things start getting back to normal, what we wanted to know was maybe some of the hacks that you both learned during the pandemic that you intend to keep around.
Obviously, and the reason why I have a wide shot is I'm going to move around a little bit, guys, and hopefully you guys can still hear me okay? Okay. So you had a lot to begin with, right, before the COVID era. This is how I typically, I have a strap to my camera. This is how I roll. Tripod, right? Just right here. And typically, one more time here. So I don't like to, I know some of my colleagues, they have a belt or a fanny pack to carry on the gear. I like to keep it very simple because I like to be mobile and moving. So this typically is just right behind here, my belt. And I'm just gonna do this. And this is typically my kind of how I typically go around talking to folks. I typically have a jacket on, white shirt right before the live shot, change it out very quickly. I'll show you guys my van very briefly later on. Change into a suit and tie, put some powder man action as I like to call it, and just kind of move forward. Now with COVID, I have this. Typically I like to use a lav mic, sometimes stick mic, but mostly before COVID I used a lav mic. I like to just mic it up to them so I can follow them a little bit aside from the interview. But now with COVID, I got a little mic stand right here, set it up right before them and then stay about 6-7 feet back. And then typically in my back pocket and my side pocket, I would have maybe a bottle of small hand sanitizer and then wipes on my side pocket to wipe down the mic after each interview. So it's made things a little more difficult, more things to carry around, but that's how I typically work. And I hope you guys, especially the folks who are already working, we're a year into this, hopefully you guys already have a system in place. So that is my typical setup to try to keep myself, obviously the mask and all that stuff, and constantly, washing your hands and using your hand sanitizer. Knock on wood. Got a piece of little wood right here. It kept me safe so far. The little system that I have in place, no COVID, none of that stuff. So, so that is my typical setup. Devin, I'll let you continue.
Yeah, so I would just say that, throughout this time, I mean, there was a point at which where we were doing a lot of our stuff from home. So we were doing a lot of Zooms. I know that I prior to the pandemic, I don't know if I was ever on a Zoom, not even once, I don't think. And so kind of my setup evolved a little bit over time. Initially, foolishly, I didn't really know how to sort of natively record on the Zoom on the Zoom website. So I was doing things where I was setting up like either the phone on a stand and filming it, and then pushing it into like a graphic and using it that way sort of early on. But now, like our station here in the Bay Area, some of the stations have had reporters that have not left their house in a year and they still report from home. Our station, for better or worse, has really kind of been in the forefront and kept, their people in the field, empowered them to sort of take whatever precautions they felt were necessary. But we've kind of been in the field. And so that setup that Daw showed you, where you've got the camera on the tripod, and then maybe a microphone stand that might be 10 or 15 or even 20 feet away, is something that I think that a lot of us use. And I kind of like it for a couple of reasons during this time. I mean, there was a point in which people didn't really feel comfortable being up close. I mean, you're normally within arm's length of somebody as you're doing an interview. And there was just a time when that was, I think just wasn't socially acceptable. People didn't really feel comfortable. So I would set it up probably 10 or 15 or maybe even further away, feet away. And one of the things that when you space those two things out, the interviewee and the camera, you can kind of control depth of field, which is something I kind of just like aesthetically. But you can also tell people if they feel comfortable, they can lower their mask because you're standing like 15 or 20 feet away from them.
And usually to me, it looks better. You can hear them a little more clearly. And so that's kind of how I've done it, but it's been something that's evolved throughout the course of the pandemic, with what people feel comfortable with.
Do you feel that like journalists are getting complacent with all these virtual interviews, and that we're going to be going in this direction of it used to be like, oh no, a virtual interview, a phoner, like we don't do phoners. Where are we going? What do you think?
So I kind of think Zoom is with us for a while. Now, if there was a story that I was, like some of the examples of the stuff that you saw, if there was a story that I was really trying to do an in-depth story, I would probably try to avoid a Zoom, if only for the fact that you give up a lot of control over what that interview is ultimately going to look like. Because if you're doing it remotely, you're not putting lights up, you're not, choosing sort of your focal length or your depth of field or any of the things that you have the ability to do when you're in person. So I think that it's probably here to stay. If it was something that was really consequential, I would try to do it in person myself. But I think that there's a tolerance, there's an acceptance of Zoom because it's become so ubiquitous, So I think it's going to be a mix, but I think that if possible, and if it's for a story that's really important, I would just urge you to try and do it in person if you can.
I think it's mixed blessings, right? I mean, I personally try to avoid Zoom interviews because think about it, guys, we're in the TV business. It's a visual business. Zoom can only do so much, and visually it's not very attractive. So I try to go to the person if the person obviously is comfortable. But I think what Zoom has opened up is there were many stories in the past where we're like, oh, the person is out of state, the person's not available right now, he's out of town, or he can't meet with us to do the interview. It's opened that door up. Now we can actually do those interviews. Oh, you're in Utah. Okay, we can do the interview. Do you have a computer or a cell phone? Yeah, okay, we can do it now. I mean, so that's opened up those stories that in the past we weren't able to do. Now we can do it if it's important. I classified, and this is kind of going back to reporting, needs and wants, guys. When you guys are looking at your story, what are the need interviews? And then what are the want interviews? The need interviews, you have to have those interviews to have a package. And then the want interviews are the interviews that can make you, okay, that went from a decent story to a really good story, or a good story to an Emmy-winning piece. So in a lot of our pieces, you have the need interviews. If the need interview is not available, but only by Zoom, then yeah, you do it. So I hated Zoom interviews. So I didn't do a whole lot of reporting from home. I try to go out for the most part, even at the beginning the pandemic. And I was just grabbing my lav. In the past, I used lav pretty much, I would say 90%. Like I said, I like to, not just the interview, but as they're going around doing things, I want to be able to get some nat sound, nat pops, them doing whatever they're doing. And so I'm looking forward, maybe the start of next year, I'll probably start to mic them up with the lav mic set. But now I strictly just do my little mic stand over there. So yeah. And it's not a question that you guys are asking, but I just want to just kind of go back to what I was telling Nazi and Riley and everybody else. So Devin and I have two different styles, as you guys saw there. He is the longer form man. He shoots some of the most beautiful pictures you'll ever see, right? There's a couple of examples I hope he'll show later on of how he edits and how he shoots. And it's like magic. And I don't know how he does it, but it's very creative. My creativity is in the shorter form, kind of like how I, set up. I do a lot of improvising, like, short story. I have a baby upstairs, so there isn't a whole lot of room to do like walking and talking, all that stuff. So got a little gym downstairs. There's a window in the back, so I just kind of taped it off with a cloth that's for my work van. So I do a lot of improvising, a lot of just like creative stand-ups to get it going. One, it's because I think sometimes news can be kind of boring. Okay, nat sound, track, soundtrack. It just gets really boring. And I just want to mix it up. And so I use sequences to create movement, just to make it look a little different. But when it's all said and done, it's about creativity. And Devin is also very creative. So it's two different forms of creativity. And so that is something that we're hoping you guys can learn briefly. I know it's very short, but we're hoping that you can see that there's a shorter form of creativity and then the longer form of creativity. Okay, I'll go back to you now.
And let me just echo what Da was saying. I think one of the things that I really kind of want to communicate to this group, because this is something about people that shoot and edit their own stuff, right? And I think that there's kind of a tendency to sort of feel that you are somehow diminished, if you're a one-man band or an MMJ, or that you're somehow less than a two-person crew. And one of the things that I really just kind of want to underscore, and I'll come back to this at the very end, that creativity and artistry, I think, is within reach, even if you're doing it yourself. And kind of, I told Da this the other day, I feel like kind of the common denominator or the nexus between what he and I do, because you could see stylistically we're very different. But I think that we're both trying to be really creative. Now, Da has said that he kind of likes to do his stuff within the four corners of his day. He doesn't want a project that starts on Wednesday and finishes next Monday. And I completely understand that. And so he really sort of shoehorns so much creativity into the 8 or 9 hours that he's working. And I was just saying that I kind of come at it from probably 180 degrees different. I'm looking for opportunities to sort of take something off the day wheel so that I can sort of dig into that story and not have the constraints that often, deadlines and time constraints kind of impose on you. But I think that the destination is the same. It's to be really creative, but I think the paths there are just different.
So our first question from Anna, she wants to know, you were talking about microphones, Da, and your stick mic. How often do the two of you include man on the street in your packages?
Oh, very often. Let me show you a very quick creative piece. I'm going to share my screen. So I do about roughly five a year of these I call sequences to create movement pieces. Just because a lot of the stories, they just won't work with this method.
He also calls them Emmy winners. That's their other name.
Yes, you can say that too. Actually, there have been times that people hate them too, so they're not automatic. But I do about 5 of these because they have to be numbers. They're very heavy with numbers, and also I don't need sound bites because I spend a good chunk of my day trying to line up interviews. But if I don't need to line up interviews, then it saves me a lot of time. I typically have an idea, how I want to pitch my story the day before. Like, okay, this is a story I can do. So I typically don't have interviews in these creative stand-ups. But then when I do go heavy on these like interviews, man on the street, Anna, this is what I do. So I'll show you a quick one very quickly here.
Well, we're nearing the end of the year of the pandemic. It's one many would like to forget, but 2020 wasn't all bad.
Oh, KPIX 5's Don Lynn started this segment 2 years ago, and he is back at it again, asking folks all over the Bay Area, what is your good news?
2020. Many say it's the worst year. A lot of death and destruction. But the Bay Area is resilient, and there are still a lot of good things happening. Let's end this year on a positive note. I'm setting up shop at Ghirardelli Square, asking people, what's your good news?
Our big good news is this little guy. He was born in August, and he's just brought so much joy and love into our home.
And then around the same time, we also moved to the East Bay and bought a home. It's exciting. Never thought it would happen, but it did. And I started my own practice, which is great too.
My good news is that this year I got my black belt at Vision Martial Arts after 5 years of hard work.
What's your good news?
I got a job promotion. My parents celebrated their 35th wedding anniversary.
My started off college this year doing online school, and I managed to get a 4.0. I go to my new preschool and I made a friend named Nico.
I survived COVID-19. I contracted it as well as me and my family, and we all went through it smoothly and safely.
We got engaged this year. I proposed to him, actually.
We were thinking May 6th, 2023.
We didn't want a coronavirus wedding, so we're trying to wait it out.
What's your good news for 2020?
My good news is I'm halfway through my master's program, and I'm actually here on a scholarship, and I am able to have my little sister come visit me.
I'm from El Paso, Texas. I haven't seen her in a while. We're very close, so it's the best feeling ever, seeing her. We both got an Exhibiting Excellence Award and Student of the Month at Silver Oak School in San Jose.
I'll end this story with some great news of my own. My wife and I just had our first child. We're blessed he's healthy and active. I hope this holiday season you'll have some great news and some inspiring stories to share with your family. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year from San Francisco's Ghirardelli Square. I'm Don Lynn, KPIX 5.
That was a piece where it was all MOSs, right? The drone was shot by Devin, actually. I was like, hey, Devin, I think I called him the night before. It's like, hey, I'm gonna go back to doing what I've done it, in the past. And so I was like, I'm gonna go back to doing what's my good news. Can you show up whatever time you can? And he does the anchoring weekend mornings. And so right after his morning shift, before he goes on to shoot his package, he came and shot that a drone shot for me before I started all of that stuff. So that's an example of how, hey, if you're going to get a bunch of MOSs, get me something creative. Get a creative way of shooting it. I have, aside from my camera, I have a couple of old used cameras. So you got a couple of, these, that camera, I have 2 of those. And then I got a bunch of GoPros. I'm going to bring a couple up. It's a little good investment, I got 3 of these that initially one broke down, so I got 2 left now. So it's a good way to get different angles and be creative with the fisheye lens. Your station's going to give you what you need to crank out stories. But if you want to do good stories, you got to do your own little investment to look at what gear is good for you, what's what are some of the things that you need to make things better for your story. So
that's great. If I may, really quick, actually, Daw and Devin, about that last story. Someone's asking, when you're getting, obviously you got a whole range of people for your that MOS story. What's your good news? What is the best technique for getting people to talk to you for MOS stories?
Sometimes, I will tell you quite honestly, at our station, we often have to do MOS. I think we often do it sort of with a groan, because our news director, I presume, who is not listening, will say, we need some real people in these stories today. And he'll kind of make that a point of emphasis. And so, I think Daw's story that he kind of highlighted really showcases a story in which the MOS really is the story. It's the heart of it. It's not something that's just kind of peripheral that you have to get and then you just kind of put into it. But I always think that, what I always tell people when they're nervous is don't rehearse it. It's not live. Don't develop a script in your head, because you're not going to be able to deliver it perfectly. Think of it like a conversation. And then I try my best to sort of engage that person and tell them, forget about the camera. Let's just talk for a little bit. And just trust me that I'm going to choose the best 6, 7, 8 seconds of it. And usually that technique works. Now, sometimes with MOS, you just have to ask a lot of people, sometimes. And those are the days that we kind of, as reporters, sort of groan a little bit and we're like, and you end up asking a dozen people to get 2 people that says yes, but it's just something that you have to do. It's just part of the job. And sometimes somebody walks up to you and says, hey, what are you doing? And they become the perfect person and it's very easy. But sometimes it's just the volume game. And I think to just try and keep that person from developing a script and just talk to you. Because then it's going to be organic and real, and it's going to feel spontaneous.
Yeah, at my station, I'm kind of known as an MOS machine.
because I've known Duff for a while, and I'm a very casual speaker to people, as he knows. So I found out a lot that what frightens people is the camera. So what I'll do is I'll put the camera down and by my side. Obviously, they know because I'm wearing something from the station or whatever that I'm a reporter. And I'll ask them the question, what do you think of this? Or what do you think of that? And then I'll ask them, that sounded great. Can you say that on camera? Because I find that 90% of people that don't want to do it are just embarrassed that they're going to say something stupid on camera. So if they know they talk to you and it's a good response, most times, because it's off the cuff, they can say it again. And they're willing to say it because they know they didn't say something stupid. So because they're already in line with it, it really works really well for me. And I've had other people try that and it worked well for them as well. So.
And I think Nazi brought up a good point in the chat section, having a set, and that's what I did. I had a set out over at the Gary Deli Square location. It's typically a well-traveled area anyway. During the pandemic, it's kind of slow, so it was pretty easy for me to just ask folks, hey, I know it's been a tough year. You want to tell us, if there's anything good that happened in your life in 2020? And, I would say it was a kind of like a 50, I would say more of, it's like a 70-30. 70% said, no, I don't want to be on TV, and then 30%. So I asked quite a few, but it was pretty easy. I had my setup, spent an hour setting everything up, making sure everything was good. So yeah, once you have a good setup, that's very easy. Pamela was asking, does your station provide the editing equipment? Yes, we use Edius, and I don't know what you guys use. For us, I've used about 5 different editing systems or apps in the past. My favorite by far is Edius. Edius allows you to incorporate drone footage, stuff that you download online, the things that you shoot, GoPro footage. I think Edius by far is the easiest. And I do a lot of the graphics you guys saw in the introduction with all the locations that are coming down and then the numbers pushing out. That's all done via Edius. You can import pictures. Let's say you want to import a map and then you want to put numbers on the map. You can do that. So Edius by far for me is the easiest and the best editing software to use. And someone was asking, how do you balance the time? Don't get me wrong, it's not easy. There's a lot. I mean, I've been doing this I started in 2002, right out of college. And a lot of mistakes that are made. And in fact, I've made some, I still make mistakes. I've gone, missed slots because I was trying to be too creative. The most recent one was two Fridays ago or 3 Fridays ago. I was trying to do something that was really creative. It was the 6 p.m. for the Friday newscast. I was trying to do a bunch of graphics and try to be snappy, sequences to create movement. And I got floated. So obviously, if you don't make the error, it sucks, right? But then sometimes this story here, I'll show you one that that was also floated. But I was able to kind of maneuver it again one more time. So I try not, knock on wood, I try not to miss slots, because if you miss slots so many times, you're going to be out of a job. But once in a blue moon, it does happen. Like I said, I don't do too many of these stories on a yearly basis, but when I do, sometimes my heart's pounding. This story here, you guys saw it briefly. So
when it comes to crime and safety, Oakland is a tale of 2 cities. We're on Lake Merritt, the heart of Oakland. To my right, downtown, uptown, West Oakland, and all the way.
I was trying to be too fancy with that, and I missed a lot with that one for actually a little while. So, trying to balance the question Jose was asking, how do you balance the time to make a story, snappy and quality and all that stuff. Doesn't always work, but when it does work, it's amazing. And you just got to manage your time. I try to do no more than 3 takes per stand-up. I basically, and this is kind of something that you guys can try for yourself. I do close-up or cutaways. These are the sequences I'm talking about. Close-ups, a lot of close-ups and medium shots. The wide shots and the medium shots are typically my stand-ups. So for the stand-ups where I'm in front of the camera, I try not to do more than 2 or 3 takes at most, because if you do too many takes, I know some people who do like 10 takes, And if you do 10 takes for each stand-up, you're not going to make error for this type of story. So you just got to be quick and snappy and just get it moving. You may not be happy with it, but you'll make errors. So I hope that answered Jose's question about how to use
Did you use split screen for that?
So split screen, Edius, so use Edius, split screen, instead of 100%, blow it up to 110%, blurry it, and shooting those split screen like multiple dots, like twins or triplets. I have a couple of stand-ups where it's triplets. You have to do it quickly. So, it must have taken you an hour. No, you can't do these within an hour because the lighting won't match at 10 o'clock compared to 10:30. You have to do it very fast. Otherwise, the lighting will not match and things won't look good.
Let me show you one quick little example. In some of the longer pieces, if I'm incorporating MOS, and I would only do it in those circumstances if I think it's kind of essential, if it adds something to it, I'll try and do a creative treatment.
And so the seeds of an idea took root. Ken reopened what was left of the winery for daily tastings, the staff pouring the wine, his customers often pouring out their hearts.
I've been here 3 years and it's been fire after fire.
We got notified around 10:30 Saturday morning that we needed to be evacuated.
You can look at it from afar and it's like a fire, but when it's coming on you, it is coming on you.
We will be here for when they do rebuild.
I've got a couple of other examples, but I won't go through that right now, where you can do something creative with the way that you sort of incorporate the MOS into the story that adds a little bit of production value as well.
Devin, can you tell us about your magical drone skills? There was a link on one of your accounts that showed a drone view over a moving train. Can you set that up? Like, how do you coordinate a drone shot like that?
Yeah, so our drone program, and Kit Doe, who's also on the chat, one of our coworkers, is one of our licensed drone pilots. We've had a drone program probably now for almost, I guess it's at least 4 or 5 years, because we have, every so often we have to recertify, and we've all done that about 3 times now. So, yeah, so in addition to that basic setup that Das showed you right at the outset, I also use my drone in addition to that. And a lot of the stuff that I will do with the drone is I'll get it up, I'll kind of have an idea of what I want to do with the shot, but I'll sort of compose it in the air. You know, I will sort of center it over, say, a railroad trestle or something of that nature, and I'll know that the train's schedule. And then I will try and sort of thread the needle and just fly it as straight as I can, like directly down the tracks. I'll know the height of the train, and I'll probably put it at about 30 or 40 feet, just so I've got enough clearance. Because the last thing that you want to do is fly your drone into a train or a building or anything else, to be perfectly honest. But a lot of that, to execute those shots, there is some planning and just kind of forethought that goes into it, because you know, you only have a battery that lasts maybe 20 to 25 minutes. And so you have to kind of know what you want, have an idea of what you want, and compose it in the air and make sure all the elements are there. And then, you know, once you kind of have everything set up, then hit record and kind of do your move. So, and I'm always looking for, you know, creative new ways to use the drone. There's a story, and maybe Steve can play it, about San Francisco's Chinatown, the challenges that it had in the last year, and sort of its struggles kind of coming into the new year.
If you walk the streets of San Francisco's Chinatown today, you will notice a riot of colors on quiet, largely empty streets. It's like a sparkling sequins dress at a party with no guests. There was real hope that this new year might bring relief and recovery and rebirth, and it still might, but it hasn't yet. So in the meantime, Chinatown is searching its roots and its reflection in the mirror.
The art of line dance is based off of martial arts. 2 martial artists that were brave, and they chose them to come out of the village to scare away a monster that would come back every year. So they decided to build this costume to try to scare it away.
The costume and a cacophony of kitchen instruments, clanging pots and pans, the precursor of today's cymbals and drums, were meant to spook the monster, prevent it from trailing us into a new year. And after the year that we've had, keeping the demons of disease and division and frankly despair at bay would be a tall order indeed.
A worldwide epidemic. Many millions of Americans may become infected.
There is no proven medical way to stop this coronavirus.
Coast to coast, the economy is in critical condition.
Bills have not stopped coming, though the paychecks in some cases have.
30 million Americans have filed for unemployment.
Chinatown is a ghost town.
Asian Americans are facing discrimination over a disease that does not discriminate.
A 91-year-old man knocked to the ground.
Battling a backlash of racial bias.
Kung flu, the Chinese virus, COVID-19.
It's not racist at all.
There is nothing normal about this summer in Chinatown.
That's one of the stories I did just a couple of weeks ago, and if you'll indulge me a little bit because it's recent. I think one of the things that this story kind of highlights for me is kind of my creative process. So the original idea that I had was that there is a fortune cookie factory in San Francisco's Chinatown. You know, it's this little hole in the wall. It's family owned. It's been there about 50 or 60 years. And my original idea was going into the Chinese New Year, okay, we've had a horrible year, everybody, and Chinatown included, especially in some ways. And so if you're sort of in the fortune telling or fortune cookie business, if you had the ability to tell yourself last year, what advice would you have given yourself before all this started? That's kind of where it started. So I was just kind of, going up to Chinatown on weekends and collecting different elements of the story. I ultimately interviewed the owner, or one of the owners of the fortune cookie factory, and he was a good interview, but he wasn't a great interview. So I was kind of, it was kind of a conundrum because I was like, well, that was going to be the whole thing, but I don't think it can be now. And so I just kind of kept collecting different elements. I thought lion dancing was, Chinatown, part of the thing that drew me to that story was that San Francisco's Chinatown is so unique. It's so visual. It's so colorful. And, lion dance was that times 10 or 100. So I was like, well, this has got to be a part of the story. So that opening sequence that I did, I had some video of them performing like on the main commercial street, but it wasn't working for me because I was flying the drone and some of the just spectators were getting irritated. I was in their way or they were in my way, however you want to look at it. So I was like, I gotta arrange with this troupe to meet me in a place where I can get multiple cameras and just do this kind of the right way. And so we figured out a place to do it. And so that opening sequence was shot with my regular camera. It was shot with the drone. It was shot with multiple GoPros. It was shot with like a gimbal, a slider, a jib, ultimately. There was a ton of stuff that went into it, some that landed on the cutting room floor, but it just gave me enough different vantage points to weave it into a story. And, and then they were telling me the sort of the origins of lion dance. I was like, that's really cool. That animation was something that Kit that's on this call helped me with. Like, we've been friends for 20 years, worked 3 different stations together. And I was like, hey, I got something.
Love you, bro.
And I was like, hey, you want to collaborate on this? Because I was like, I think our graphics department will let us down. So you want to do it? And he basically didn't know how to animate, but he like locked himself in a room for 4 days and taught himself. Like, I kind of storyboarded it for him. And then like, he just knocked it out of the park. So there's, even when you work together, when you work by yourself, you should look for opportunities to collaborate because sometimes you are more than the sum of your parts. If you can work collaboratively. Doc kind of highlighted, I shot the drone work with him on one thing. So yeah, there are ways to be creative.
Hey guys, I know a lot of you guys in the smaller markets are trying to move up to at least to the media markets. I know some of you guys are like, how do I win my first Emmy? So I think Devin and I are going to spend the next maybe 30 minutes, if time allows, to talk a little bit about how you guys can get better, how you guys can do what Devin is doing, or even the creative stand-ups that you're doing. I think first of all, being a good MMJ means you have to be a good reporter, because think about it, MMJ, you're not just a good reporter, you're a good editor and you're a good photographer. So sometimes it's all about going back to the basics. Before you think about shooting these beautiful drone videos or doing, you know, a whole stand-up piece, think about working on the fundamentals. I'm gonna stand up because it's easier for me to talk that way. Think about the fundamentals, right? Be a good reporter first. Be a good shooter first. A very basic thing. I tell folks, my old station at Cron, some of my old colleagues, they will not use a tripod. This is, you know, they go around just doing this, and it's not the way to shoot. If you're going to do it right. And I think it's important, if the footage is not moving, if the person is not moving, if you're shooting real estate shots, meaning something that's stationary, whether it's a building, whether it's a sign, it's a real estate shot, it's stationary. Don't do this, because you're something that is steady and you're, you know, we're moving bodies. You got to use a tripod unless you're following a protest. Unless someone is walking, then carry the tripod. Ask your station for a good tripod. I use Cartoni. It's very light. It's very stable. Use a tripod. Start with the basic. I tell folks, if you want to be, you know, Usain Bolt, try to win the Olympics running the 100 meters, well, you got to be able to run well first. You got to know the basic first. So start with that. Invest in a good lighting kit. The lighting kit is for the longer form. I have a lighting kit here. So use a tripod. Remember, close, medium, wide. Okay, for editing. Close, medium, wide. I like to stay on it for about 10 seconds because when I'm in a time crunch, sometimes it's just going to make error. It's not going to be a beautiful piece. If you give me 10 minutes, I'll make error. If you give me more time, I'll make you an Emmy piece. All right. So that's something that I always tell people. So if you have 10 seconds and you're like, hey, I have to send this package in with the next 4 or 5 minutes. Okay, well, you got 5 clips, 10 seconds each. Just let that sucker play it. It's going to be wallpaper. Just slap it on the timeline, get your story in. If you have time, then of course, you know, match the video, use the NAT sounds and all that stuff. But I like to at least give it 10 seconds for each clip, put it on a tripod. So start with that basic stuff. Make sure your video is pretty. Make sure everything looks good, okay? And I always tell, if you guys are going to remember anything, I attend a lot of seminars and, you know, reporter classes, MMJ classes when I was younger, right? When I was starting out. The one thing I want you guys to remember, personality, especially nowadays with YouTubes and all that stuff. My old professor back in the 90s used to tell me any dumbass can be on TV, okay? It takes a person with personality to be able to last in the business. Get your personality across. When you're doing your stand-ups, get your personality across. I don't know if she's still there, but the news director over at the ABC station in LA about 10 years ago said, Doc, I want you to command a screen. I want you to grab the camera. I want you to command the screen, okay? So what she meant by that, it took me a while to understand, what the hell do you mean by commanding the screen? In a live shot, when you're shooting a stand-up, you have to come across knowing a topic that you just learned maybe 4 or 5 hours ago if you're a general assignment reporter. So know your topic and come across knowing your topic, right? So you're comfortable. Use your surroundings. Command the screen. I'll show you something that's really quickly here. You can use your surroundings for doing creative stand-ups, using your surroundings, that helps you command the screen. You don't have to do it. You can just stand there. You can stand there and just command the screen, but reference things, talk about things, you know, be authoritative, because you don't want to come across as a jackass, but you also want to cross as knowing your craft, knowing the topic that you're talking about so that you sound credibility. And a lot of times I try to use my environment to help me to do that, to command the screen. So,
hey, Doc, quick question for you.
Yeah.
Do you think that essentially those times when you're on both sides of the camera, when you're recording yourself, isn't that one of the most challenging things that we do? I mean, I think that it is, because it's so hard to simultaneously be on both sides.
Yeah.
You know, right? And you have to kind of frame it beforehand, and you have to check it afterwards to make sure that so walk people maybe through some of that, because I think I've had to do it for a decade now, but I still find it challenging to sort of be on both sides of the camera at once. And that's just not even trying to kind of be as creative as you are in terms of your stand-ups. So just kind of, what are some tips for folks in terms of being in front of and behind at the same time?
I shoot everything. I forgot to tell you guys, I do not use automatic. Everything on this camera is manual, from the zoom to the iris, everything on this camera, I just change it to manual. So what I do is I typically have let's say I'm gonna walk from here. I'm gonna walk over to here. I typically just make sure I zoom into the in spot, and that is where I'm gonna focus that in spot. And my previous camera was not zoom. Anyway, the zoom was kind of funky, so it was a little more challenging. This camera is better. Anyway, focus on your in spot, and then just zoom in, focus, and then pull out. Now that you know your focus and that's the framing that you want, you don't have to worry about being focused back here, because typically if you're focused over there, you're going to be focused back here. So yeah, it's a little tricky to shooting your own stand-ups, but I think and it's going to take you guys time. I mean, it's going to take you a little bit of time it took me 5 years to become comfortable on air. I think it was my third TV station job. Finally became a little more comfortable. You know, at first, my second job, I'm like, what the hell am I doing? Am I even doing it right? Like, oh, that story sucked. You know, so you're gonna have some self-doubts and all that stuff, but it's okay. You know, you're in a smaller market, you're learning to be better, you are afforded to make mistakes. They're paying you to make mistakes. And so you can make mistakes, and it's okay. It's gonna take some time. So but
hey, do you ever use a light stand to basically like get the composition right?
No, I don't actually use the light stand. I when I'm out and about, I barely use. I have a little light kit right here. When I'm out and about, I don't use a light at all.
No. So one thing that I do, because I've always found it difficult to kind of compose a shot properly and get it in focus, and so I will use a light stand that I raise to my height. And then I use that as kind of my guide, so I know how to compose it and also to get it in focus. Then I kick the light stand aside and I go and stand in its place. So that's one of the ways that I will kind of frame and compose and focus a shot before I hit record.
So I try to use the environment. So I like to carry as little as possible. So I try to look for rocks. Let's say there is a stain on the floor, I try to use that as my focal point and just zoom into that stain or that dirty spot, because it doesn't matter when you're zooming in, as long as you're standing at that spot, you're okay. So I know you're standing up, it's a little higher than what the ground is, but the zoom is not going to change. So, or sometimes if I see a little rock, I was like, all right, that little rock, that's where I'm going to stand. I'm going to zoom into that little rock and then zoom out and set my framing. Or I can just put this on the ground and just focus on that. And so yeah, I try to carry as little as possible. But here, it's going to take you a little time to do the creative sequences, to create movement, that stuff. Your entire package stand-ups, that's going to take a little while. It took me about 10 years to be really comfortable and to feel okay with doing an entire package with stand-ups. But right now, what you can do to get your next job, to impress your news director, is in your stand-ups, use your environment. I was at a grocery store, I think it was 2 Fridays ago, doing a story about this grocery store. And so I was like, how can I make the stand-up interesting? So this is what I did with the tease, and also this is what I did with the stand-up intro. So it's just very simple. It's something that's very quick that you can do, but you just got to think about it, put in some more effort into it. So I'm going to share a screen here very quickly.
For 40 years, supermarkets refused to set up shop in this low-income East Bay neighborhood. So hundreds of community members came together, chipped in their own money to open this full-service grocery store. But now this community success story is in danger of closing down because of the pandemic. Coming up, how you can help. And it's really simple.
So I'm at a grocery store, and that's going back to kind of commanding the screen, right? And getting your personality across. It's just use your environment, use your, if you're at a grocery store, think of a way to make it creative. If you're, let's say you're out and about, instead of just standing up and do this, if there's a bench nearby, sit down at the bench, talk about the issue. If you're talking about a lawsuit, print out the pages of the lawsuit and say, hey, on page number 2, this is some serious stuff. Just use whatever you can to just at least make the stand-ups a little more interesting rather than just, hi, my name is Don. I'm here talking about this thing that I really don't care about. I just found out about it today. I mean, get engaged, get involved, command the screen. And I think that's one way to improve your stand-ups so you can get a good tape and move on to your next market as well.
One of the things that I like to do is, most of us will do daily stories, but you'll hear something in the course of that story where you'll tell yourself, you know what, that's not today's story, but that might be next week's story. And I will always kind of listen for those opportunities to find that deeper level. That's what I'm always looking for. So just a very quick example of that. There was a story that I did a couple years ago. And the initial story was just about the fact, I think it was one of the airlines, and they had an all female crew. All of the flight crew, the pilots were all females. And I think that might have been the first time that had happened for that airline, and it had kind of gone viral on social media. So my story that day was go talk to some female pilots and try and kind of give us a little bit of context for why this is significant. Now, in the course of reporting that story, and I think that day I went up with this woman that shared a plane with a couple of other pilots. She was telling me that the original owner of the plane that she was flying me in was this woman that was going to turn 100 in like a couple of weeks. And she used to own this plane, and she used to fly the plane until she was 96, until she had to sort of begrudgingly acknowledge that she just didn't have the physical strength to maybe fly that plane anymore. And I said, wait a sec. Okay. So that, I still had to do the story that I was doing that day, but I was then intrigued by this idea of this 100-year-old pilot, because she was telling me, well, one of the things that we're going to do, she still loves to fly. She can't pilot it herself, but she loves to fly. And we're going to take her out for a flight in honor of her 100th birthday. And I said, wait a second, now that's a story. And I won't pull that one up at this point, but that's an example of you're covering a daily story, and an even better story for, somewhere down the line falls into your lap. And so I was able to go up with them and fly and sort of tell this woman's story, because she was flying during the Second World War, not in the Second World War, but during that era, at a time when very few women were really flying. And so I think always you just have to kind of keep your eyes and your ears open as a reporter, because people will tell you things and you may not be able to do it that day, but if you can circle back to it and do it the right way, then you got gold. I'm going to toss to Daw. I'm going to find that story, show you a little bit of it in a second.
Yeah, that was great. That was a beautiful story. Ido was asking, I hope I pronounced your name correctly, IDO there. You're talking about, do you know your story ahead of time, or are you just kind of figuring out on the fly? And I hope Devin's answer earlier answered that question. A lot of times you kind of have an idea of what you're covering, but then you don't know what the story is until you're there. So quite a few years ago, I was sent out to cover a beauty pageant. They're like, yeah, just go cover a beauty pageant. But I was like, there's got to be a more interesting story than just beauty pageant. And then I noticed all the girls, they had their high heels off and they were like, massaging their feet. And so the story was about high heels, how to survive, the practices and all that stuff with the high heels. Anyway, so you're going to find the stories as you're going out to these assignments. You have an idea, but you're not going to know the real story until you go out there. And I hopefully that answers your question. I was going to tell you guys also the other thing too, for you guys is being a good writer. It takes time too. I would just go onto your either YouTube or in your own market if there's someone that you like. Watch and kind of take notes. For example, here in the Bay Area, there are some reporters that I really like. Aside from Devin and Kid, who I watch I watch a lot of their stuff. Another person who does really good day turns, Deborah Villalone over at Channel 2. I love her short writing. She does not, on TV, she does not write with complete sentences. She will write with some of the most important facts in a sentence. Very simple. That's how we talk. We don't talk in complete sentences, right? We're told when we're in J school, journalism school, write conversationally. And so Deborah Villalone, she writes very conversationally. And so I watch her stuff and I listen and I learn. I was like, all right, I'm going to use that. I'm going to try to, kind of take that style and make it my style and kind of make that and evolve with that. So you guys in your market, whether it's Chico, whether it's Eureka, whether it's down in the Monterey market, see if there's a reporter that you really like. And let's say, there is another reporter that you really like in another market. It's easy to watch your newscast on their website or on YouTube. Just kind of think of how you can be better with your writing, shorter, more conversational, and then track, your track. Just try to see if there's a friend, pretend there's a friend in your van or in your SUV. Track it where it's conversational, it comes across natural. I think with stand-ups too, doing a lot of these stand-ups, aside from commanding the screen, as that news director told me from LA, it's just be natural, be yourself. And that comes back to personality. So I hope that helps. I want to show you, like folks are saying, like, how do you do some of these stand-ups with the stuff that you have? And I think it's about being prepared. My van is, I'll show you, so you can do it with a small vehicle. I had a small vehicle when I was at Cron. I shot this video, I think about 10 years ago when I was doing another MMJ class for NATAS. And it's just about being prepared. I'll show you just a small portion of this video very quickly.
Like any newsroom, I start off the day with a meeting with the assistant news director, the producers, and the assignment desk. Once I have a story idea, I'm out the door. And this little Pontiac Vibe is where I spend a good part of my day. And this is where the production is done, and I'll get to that in just a second. First off, I want to talk about preparation, because I think preparation is one of the most important things that you have to succeed in the VJ world. You have to be prepared. And there are a lot of things that you can do to prepare yourself. I want to show you what I have in my car, because I think that will give you an idea of what I mean by that. Since I never know which story I'm going to cover until I get into the newsroom, I try to have everything that I need inside this car so that I'll be prepared for any type of situation. So in the back of my car, I have this reflective safety vest if I need to get footage out on the road. I have this rain jacket here covering rain. I've got fire gear here covering wildfires. I've got, let's see, beanie and some gloves in here if I need to cover snow. I got a lot of other types of clothes in here just to make sure I stay warm and dry.
So you get the idea. So I utilize every part of my small little vehicle there when I was there to have a lot of props and things that I can use. I'm gonna jump onto my current van over at KPIX, right? So bear with me here. I'm gonna mute this. All right, hopefully you guys can, oops, let me walk away from here. Let me turn this thing around here. Bear with me. So now this is my work van, okay? So it's a little different. Same concept. I got a desk in here, shelving with all the props. I'm gonna turn a light on here so you can kind of see what I have in the background. So bear with me here. So I use a lot of boards. So you see under there, I got a bunch of little boards that I use to just do stand-ups with them. Light kits on top. Got a bunch of suit jackets and ties hanging in the background. More stuff in the back up here, just like a lot of props that I use. So anyway, in the back, aside from a safety box where I lock all my gear. So that's kind of like my setup. You're gonna find your own system, what works for you, right? How you can put all the props in your van, especially if you get to take your van home. So Devin, I'm gonna
close this down so you can take over with your story.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and show you just a little snippet of the pilot story, if you'll bear with me for just a moment here.
Mayetta was flying high, often bringing her growing family on cross-country flights or training in 1961 to break the sound barrier in a military jet.
The pilot let me fly the airplane. Perhaps I shouldn't say this publicly because it may not be good for the pilot.
But time has a way of bringing even the most high-flying pilots back to Earth. 6 years ago, at 94, Mayetta decided she no longer had the strength to pilot a plane on her own.
I think not being able to fly the plane herself hurt more than anything else. And she just loves it.
Last month, Mayetta celebrated her 100th birthday.
How you doing, Mayetta? Fine.
And was given a special gift
Got a big round, ready to taxi. We've done our run-up.
by her fellow female pilots.
So we've been cleared for takeoff?
A flight in her honor. And from the moment the plane's wheels lifted off the runway, slipping gravity's leash, Mayetta was in heaven.
I think it's the freedom of being up there all by yourself, and you are in control.
All right, is that descent too much, too fast?
But what goes up must too come down.
Thank you, Laura. That was a wonderful, wonderful flight. I'm always happy to fly, especially with Mayetta.
And as our plane taxied back to the hangar with our cameras still rolling, Mayetta had this to say.
I'm glad you liked it. Then you have to come again. I started. You did? We did good.
I can't imagine staying on the ground all my life. That's an impossibility.
But at 100, Mayetta spends far more time on the ground than the air these days.
You know, so that was the story that was after the day turn story. And you know, I think that there was just more to it, you know, and that's what I'm always looking for, you know, when I'm doing my daily stories. If there's something else that really sort of jumps out, then I will try to find a way to come back to that story and give it the time that it deserves, because there's just certain things you're not going to be able to get that day, right? You have to kind of make the investment. So you get her birthday party, you get the, you know, flight in her honor, and then you've got all of those elements to really tell, you know, a really good story that you wouldn't have been able to tell just if you took just that one day to do it.
Incredible. Oh my gosh. I wish we could stay here all day and pick your brains and ask you questions. I know we're coming up to the end of our time here, but before I send it to Patty to tell everybody a little bit about membership, do you guys, both of you, have maybe one solid piece of advice that you could give us before the end of our program?
Yeah, let me just jump in. So I kind of said this early on, but it's something that I really sort of feel. Do not believe that you are diminished, that you are less than a two-person crew. That I think that excellence and creativity and artistry, those are all within reach. You just kind of have to work for it. Don't offer yourself up the ready-made excuse that, well, I can't do it because it's just me. You know, I think that the stories, hopefully, that Daw showed and that maybe that I've shared with you today kind of is proof that you can if you want to. And also, you know, but conversely, look for the opportunities to collaborate. I mean, Daw showed you an example of a story where he asked for my help with the drone. Kit, who's also on this call, did an amazing animation for me on that piece about San Francisco's Chinatown. And it was just something that was a little bit beyond my technical expertise that I wouldn't have been able to do on my own. There's a lot that you can do. You can be really, really creative even by yourself if you plan it and you kind of dedicate yourself to it. And then, you know, there might be another photographer or MMJ or someone in your, you know, your graphics department that might be able to kind of give you that little bit of icing on the cake on some of those stories. And so don't take the fact that you're working by yourself as meaning that there's kind of a ceiling to your creativity. That's really more than anything else what I really kind of want to emphasize.
Devin, can you answer Riley's question about how you got the footage from the wing? She was just asking, let's see, what was she asking?
Yeah, yeah. So on that one,
and audio as well.
I knew that I wanted to get some of the wing shots. There was a specific GoPro mount. It's very, very specific because I was concerned that if I just sort of did a traditional either magnetic or suction mount, that the last thing that I wanted to do was the GoPro to sort of fly off the wing at 5,000 feet and then, come clunk on somebody's head or somebody's car. So basically you could screw it in, and I had to order it and make sure that I had it here in time for that flight, but it actually physically screwed into the wing. And I'd researched what the FAA regulations were because they don't, for obvious reasons, they don't want just a lot of tenuous connections or accessories put on the outside of the plane. But if you physically kind of secured it, and I did with multiple screws, you could be reasonably confident that it wasn't going to come off. I was still a little bit nervous with it because I'd never used it before. I bought it specifically for that story, but it was going to, I think, hold on more securely than something that, was a magnetic mount or a suction mount or something like that.
And then also, that's so cool. And then with the audio, I heard what sounded like organic audio from the headset, like in the how did you record that audio?
So I think what I did was I had a headset. In one of those wider shots, you could see me in the back, sort of behind the pilot. So I put my actual lavalier microphone into the earpiece, just stuck it up there and just sort of dealt with it, because that was going to be the only way that I was going to get kind of clean audio. I had to subtitle the stuff at the end because it was this moment that we weren't really expecting. I mean, we were sort of finished with the flight, taxiing back, and that's when they had that exchange. And I was like, well, this is great. I got to find a way to get it in here. And even if the audio isn't great, if I subtitle it right, you'll still kind of get the point that she just loves this almost more than anything else. It's kind of been stolen from her by time, but she was so thankful even to just be in the passenger seat. I think she would have loved to be, in the pilot's chair, but couldn't really responsibly, but just kind of loved the fact that she was flying again and that she was with these, her fellow female pilots that, had kind of formed this sorority over years and years and years and years. And she had trained a lot of those people. And to make the expense of ownership of the plane a little bit more manageable, they had always kind of divided it between 3 and 4 people. Obviously, once she stopped flying, she kind of gave up that ownership stake, but those are people that she'd flown with for years, really.
I think to close it out, I would just say, if you're going to remember anything from this seminar, is to get your personality across the TV screen, especially for the reporters who are trying to get to the next level, next market. Personality. Like I said, it's so important. Once you have the personality, then you'll do eventually what that ABC News director will say, command the screen. So get your personality across. To do what Devin is doing, to do what Kid is doing, Kid Doe, to do what I'm doing, it's going to take some time. If it's your first, second, third year, you're going to have to practice a lot more, just working on the basics. Before you can learn how to shoot, dunk a basketball, you got to know how to dribble the ball. You got to be able to, do the basic things first. And so to be a great MMJ, you have to be a good reporter, a good photographer, and a good editor. It's a 3-pronged approach. So work on those basic things. How do you become a good reporter? Delivery, writing, all that stuff. Okay, how do you become a good shooter? Using a tripod, close-up, medium, wide. How do you become a good editor? It takes practice, no jump cuts, all that stuff. So I know it's not sexy, it's not fast. You're not going to win your Emmy tomorrow, but you're going to have to take time and just practice on those basic things. In time, it will come. I was telling someone, Jose, I don't use IG. Maybe Devin does. If you have any questions for us after the seminar, I got my email on there. Feel free to send me an email. I'm more than happy to answer any questions. If you want to see more samples from Devin or from myself, send us an email. We'll send you some stories that we have done in the past. I have a lot of folks that I watch, that I love their stuff. Deborah Villalone, for example, like folks like Noelle Walker. I love her stuff. So I have some of those that I saved, and I can send it to you as well. And of course, Nazi was saying, if you're a student, you're looking for your first job, what a great opportunity. Nazi is hiring. So I'm sure you guys will be sending her a lot of emails and tapes. So get your personality across, be patient, work on the basics. Once you have a solid foundation, you'll be able to do those sequences with movement, all stand-ups within your package, or the beautiful drone shots, the airplane shots. You'll be able to do those. It just takes a little bit of time.
Hey, Don, I want to share just a quick story and then ask you if this is something that kind of a conversation that might be able to continue in some form. So kind of way back in my career when I was in Monterey, which was my second stop, it was a lot of people for whom it was either like a first or maybe a second stop. And we knew that we were only going to be there for a couple of years, probably like a lot of these folks are in the smaller to medium markets. And so we used to do this thing where I can't even remember if it was every month or it might have even been, every couple of weeks. But basically the young reporters in that market, we just kind of told ourselves like, our goal is to get the next job. So let's try and help each other do that. And so we would have dinner together and we would bring examples of our work, either things that we were working on or maybe the latest sort of iteration of our resume reel or something that we did in the past week. And that was kind of the understanding. Like if you're going to come, have something that you want to show and get people's feedbacks on. And we said, we're just going to keep this group till everybody's gone, right? And it worked really well, slowly, over the course of weeks and months, everybody got that next job and moved on to someplace else. My next stop was New Orleans. I know one girl went down to San Diego. Somebody went to Bakersfield. I mean, people. But what I loved about it was just the collaboration and the community, and I think that it's something that we probably don't do nearly enough. And I think that I was thinking about it before we jumped on this call. Like, is there a way once a month to have a Zoom? I mean, that's one of the beauties of this thing is that, you don't have to be physically in the same spot where people could say, hey, I'm really proud of this story I did last week. Let me show it to you guys. And what do you think? Or I'm working on this, or this is, kind of the opening montage of my resume. What do you guys think? And if we just did it once a month, it wouldn't be that onerous, but I think that people would enjoy kind of continuing the conversation and bouncing ideas off of each other. So, if anybody's interested in something like that, I've got my email on there. Daw's got his email. I didn't even pitch this to Daw, so he's coming at this cold, but what do you sort of think of the idea of just kind of, like a group that can share each other's work and try and amplify each other's creativity?
Yeah, for sure. I'm down for it. I have a 7-month-old, so it's scheduling. It's a little more difficult, but yeah, I'm more than happy if I can sign on. I'm definitely going to be able to, sign on, and then I'll do it. And of course, emailing, it's the best. So yeah, I'm down for it. I think that's a great idea. I had something very similar actually back then when I was at the Pointers Institute. I would go there for a seminar, and then a group of us, we would have a group email, similar idea, basically kind of helping each other to get a job, moving on to medium, large markets, things like that. So anyway, I think
somebody on the chat said that they don't even MMJ, but you wouldn't have to. I mean, if you're reporting a story, it doesn't matter. I mean, it's still at the end of the day, the reporting of the storytelling could be what you would share. It doesn't matter if somebody else was the photographer or the editor. I think the concept would still work.
Hey, that's awesome. Cool. Nazi, we'll let you take it back.
You guys are amazing. Like I said, we could just soak in this up all day long. We just appreciate your time so much. Thank you for sharing your talents with us, your tips with us. We're certainly probably going to stalk you for some more guidance and support as we move forward. And I know we are past time, so I'm going to try to make it quick, but I know Patty, I got to send it over to Patty, who manages membership with our San Francisco NATAS chapter, and she has a few words.
Thank you both, Dot and Devin. This is exactly the type of thing that our membership wants to offer. And these ideas, that's how it comes, is when we have something like this, and it's a good idea to do it so we can talk further about anything like that. Steve, are you able to show that page real quick? That on our website, mesf.tv, there is under membership a member benefits page. And I could go on and on about what we do, but if you take a look at that, that'll give you an idea. And just to say that these are how ideas come up, is by hearing from our members what will improve your career, how will you learn, like today's session, and networking. So there's a lot of, we're getting back to social, we're getting back to actual events. And I just want to mention one on here, is that the mentor match program, we're definitely working on making that strong, and that is members only. So some of these are open to non-members, some of them have low prices for members, but our mentor match program, we find mentees come to us and tell us they'd really like to get stronger for larger markets, mentors to work with them, and however that may be, in person, do it, maybe follow for a day or online. And so I highly recommend anyone who can take advantage of that, please do as a member. Just contact us, tell us anything that you think would help for to strengthen your career, social, now that we can be social, networking, and learning. Appreciate it. I really invite you to contact us and let us know. So thank you all. I guess, Steve, if you want to continue.
Yeah, thank you, Patty. And thank you, Dalin and Devin. Let's do this again sometime. I love your idea about maybe doing this again, and maybe we can wrap that around on a program or do this consistently. So if you've missed any part of this Zoomcast, we recorded it. So look for a follow-up email that'll send you a link to the recorded program, or just check for it on our website, mesf.tv. You'll find it under the Activities tab, along with all of the other programs that we've been producing over the last year. I'd like to thank our rockstar MMJs, Dalin and Devin Fehely. Thank you so much for taking your time to share your experience with us. It's been great. I love seeing the examples. I love hearing you guys talk. Seeing the how-to behind it has been, I think, really amazing. I'd also like to thank all those who've helped made this program possible. Nazi Javid, Riley Carroll, Shane Calvert, Chris Carpenter, Patty Zuvov, Randy Forsman, and Daryl Compton. Thank you for spending this afternoon with us.
Wait, before we go, one last thing. It's Steve's birthday.
Hey, happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday,
Well,
Steve.
thank you all for that. Thanks all.
Thanks for being here, everybody. Have
Thank
a
you,
good
guys.
your weekend.